Mr. Leader of the Opposition, Aubrey Norton, read an entire statement today at his press conference dealing with PPP's discrimination. And he spoke specifically about land issues and how the PPP is discriminating in relation to land and taking away land from Afro-Guyanese and giving it to Indo-Guyanese. And I'm going to deal with allegations after allegations which he has made. But before I get there, he has opened the door for me to speak about which government has a history of seizing people's property. Now, the PNC, when they were in government from 1966 to 1992, 1964 to 1992, they have a long record of seizing people's property and paying little or no compensation whatsoever. And that was a governmental policy of theirs. If you don't support their political party, then they used the legal mechanism that was available to confiscate people's property. And the law at that time, as the law does now, authorizes the state to compulsorily acquire property for public purpose. And that public purpose is stated in the law. It must be for a developmental purpose. The law then, however, and we changed the law then allowed the state to pay a 1939 valuation of that property. And the law further provided that no one could have questioned the value paid by the government in a court of law. That was the law that they had in Guyana when they seized people's property. And of course, it was a dictatorship. That was the law that they had. You could seize the property and you were required to pay only a 1939 valuation. And that decision, that valuation, or the quantum that they paid, was not questionable in a court of law. Using that law, dozens and dozens of properties were seized by the PNC government. And not for developmental purposes. They were seized simply because, for political reasons and whimsical and capricious reasons. 3 properties that come to mind is the Sankar estate at Hope was seized and paid 1939 valuation. The building that used to house a place called Saijan Plaza was owned by a man named Singh. They seized that and they converted it into Saijan Plaza, a place where you had to go and buy things only with US dollars. Another property that comes to mind is where the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is. Tacuba Lodge, they seized that from the Kissoon's family, paying peppercorn compensation, 1939 valuation. They seized a series of homes from Afro-Guyanese in South Rumvelt, West Rumvelt, sorry. And as Attorney General between 2011 and 2015, I invited those people to take the government to court. I was the Attorney General. And I went to court and I consented, and those people got back all their houses. And when I inquired of them why these properties were taken away, you know what they told me? That Burnham suspected that their parents were Rodney supporters, were supporters of the WPA. And he took away dozens of properties in West Rumvelt. Those people may be listening to me. It is the PPP government that gave back those people. And they were all Afro-Guyanese. The thing is that we don't make these things public. I was the Attorney General who did that for the PPP government. One of the changes that we made to the Constitution was that we removed that offensive provision that allowed the government to only pay 1939 value, and we changed that to market value, current market value, so that the state now can acquire property but must pay market value for it and must only acquire for a developmental purpose. And anyone can question it in the court of law. That is how we have changed the law. Norton, Mr. Norton, his hero is Forbes Burnham. He should be the last one in the PNC, of which he's the leader, should be the last one to talk about proprietary interest and proprietary rights in this country. They have no track record. They have a track record of seizing people's property and paying them 2 cents. That is why so many people fled this country and went and applied for refugee status in Canada and all over the place. They left their property and ran because nothing was safe. They were not safe and their properties were not safe. And today, Aubrey Norton believes that people will forget that. And he is lecturing people. Let me fast forward to when they were in government. And you have been listening to me for years, and I highlighted how many properties they seized while they were in government. Just 2015 to 2020, the rice farmers from West Coast Berbice are still there. 50 leases they took one time. David Granger revoked them all. They seized the Red House from the Chetty Jagan Institute. All of that we had to go to court and win. That was only the other day. And this guy is speaking about unlawful land acquisition. And I'm going to deal with the allegations, but I just want you to reflect. And it's not that they didn't give lands. They gave lands, but only to their cronies and friends, as I keep saying. And I'm going to deal with some of them right here in answer to these allegations that Mr. Norton has made. So I want to put this this acquisition of land and the seizure of land into a context to show that the PNC and Aubrey Norton should never be speaking on these issues because of what they have done in government. And you know, that is it. They will never be able to run away from their history and their past. They want people to forget it. That's why they keep changing their names. APNU, PNCR, PNC. But it's the same people. The people of Guyana gave them a chance between 2015 and 2020. And they did exactly what they were accustomed to doing. So let us deal with the press conference now. Now let me begin by recognizing that when they were in the government, they shared out hundreds and hundreds of acres of state land. They sold them They leased them without any public advertisement process, without any public process whatsoever. And that is why only their friends and cronies benefited. There was no public advertisements that Guyanese saw to say that Wales Estate, one can go there and apply for land, or Ogle lands were being sold, or at Providence land was being sold. No advertisement. So that the public, the ordinary Guyanese, never had an opportunity of knowing that this option was available to them. Yet, hundreds of acres of land were gifted away in the most non-transparent manner. And when you examine the transaction one by one, none of the transactions were paid for. None were fully paid for. Not a single one of them. Some of them, a few percent was paid down, and people got title, and people got full leases. The lands were landlocked, most of them. They were so incompetent that they didn't even demarcate road and delineate the land. So one land was behind another. There was no road to get to the land. And none of the people paid off for these lands, but they all got title and leases. That is why when we went into government, 90% of the people came forward and give us back the land. Voluntarily, they gave up the land because they realized, one, they can't pay for it. Two, they couldn't get to the land. They were landlocked. There was no road or nothing. Three, none of them could complete the sales, or many of them couldn't complete by paying off the balance of the purchase price. The entire thing stank to heaven. The corruption was repulsive, the level of corruption. And as I said, more than 90% of the people came in and they gave back their title and they said they don't want any problem. They understood. There is a man who got 200 acres of land, 200 acres. And you know what the agreement says? Somewhere in Ogle. That is what the agreement says. 200 acres at $1 million per acre. $1 million per acre at Ogle, one of the primest pieces of real estate in the country. 200 acres, $1 million per acre. And his agreement says somewhere in Ogle. He doesn't have a diagram. He doesn't have a plan. That guy is afraid to come and even ask where the land is. Because as soon as he comes forward, I believe the police ought to be called in. That is the level of vulgarity and skullduggery I'm speaking about. Trevor Benn, who was the head of lands and surveys, was never given the authority by President Granger to sell land. State land in Guyana vests in the president. Only he has the power to authorize how the land can be dealt with. And he can give you power to lease or to sell. He never trusted Trevor Benn. He never gave him power to sell. But Trevor Benn sold several pieces of land and passed title to cronies. All passed illegally. We settled with those people. We settled with them. Sivan's waste management is one of them. Wilfred Branford is another. They came in and they said, look, they want to settle. They understand that a criminal act was committed, and we settled with them. They are Afro-Guyanese. They gifted a wharf to BK An Indian man. A war value $8 billion. They give him for 20 million Guyana dollars. I spoke at length about it. $20 million he paid for $8 billion property. And he gets a clean title. 10% of the purchase price. 10% of the purchase price he pays and he gets a full transport. He's Indian. We are going behind him too. I spoke an hour on that case that is ongoing in the High Court. So having said that, let's move into what Norton is saying now. Norton says that the PPP government took away land from an African Guyanese who owns an organization called Caring for Others Guyana Inc., Miss Elsine Richmond Shockley. He says that the PPP took away this land from this lady because she's Afro-Guyanese. Well, I have the transaction here. I have the paper here. This land is 3 acres of commercial land at Providence. 3 acres of commercial land at Providence was leased to this woman in 2017, leased to this organization for 20 years, and she never paid, leased, and she was supposed to pay a deposit of 1,950 US plus VAT, 1,950 US plus VAT, 3 acres of commercial land. Per year, and never paid a cent. 2,000 US a year and never paid a cent from 2017 to September 2020. Not even the deposit. Not even the deposit to sign the lease. Look, the lease is signed. And never paid even the deposit, not even the first month rent. Nisil, the landlord, took back the land because there was no consideration in the contract. The contract is null and void. Norton today said on his program that the PPP took it back because the woman is Afro-Guyanese. That is the type of dangerous racism that they are spewing every single day. They say that we are taking legal actions to get back property in Wales and more. But let them say what process was embarked upon for these people to get these property at Wales and more. Many of the people are giving up the properties. They are giving up the properties because they recognize the illegality. But I'll move on. He says that PPP is regularizing Pigeon Island while bulldozing Afro-Guyanese at Mocha. Pigeon Island, as you know, is a squatter settlement that is more than 50 years old. Most of the persons in Pigeon Island have transports for their property. Most of them. There are a few, and these people are there 50 years. The mayor of Georgetown lives in Pigeon Island. I am sure he has transport. The mayor of Georgetown, Aubrey Norton mayor. There are a few people who need to be regularized, and yes, the government will regularize them. As the government is regularizing number 4, number 5, and I believe number 3 village on West Coast Berbice, all Afro-Guyanese villages. And I am leading that initiative on behalf of the government. Number 5, number 4, and the other village next door, I can't remember what number it is. I'm not sure it's number 3. They are all Afro-Guyanese village that we are regularizing now. We are regularizing the backlands of Golden Grove and Haslington. Those are Afro-Guyanese communities. Norton went there after I left. Those are Afro-Guyanese communities that we are regularizing. But Mr. Norton, we don't look at it on the basis of race. And that is your problem. That is the PNC's problem. Now the people at Mocha that he's making reference to have been living on a particular government reserve for over 30 years. It's a government reserve. They are squatting there. Since 2008, the government begun to engage them to move. Since 2008. It's about 30 persons. The highway, the alternative highway running from Diamond, running from Mandela Avenue through Eccles, will have to pass there eventually. And they are directly in the path of where the road has to pass. And the Ministry of Housing went in there recently and have worked out settlement arrangements with 30 persons, 30 families, and are moving them to Farm Phase 2 and Plantation Horstelling, 2 neighborhood communities, and giving them lands to move and paying them also compensation. Norton, with a straight face, says that the government is bulldozing these people. Now there are a few, I think 2 or 3, who are causing some problems, and the government will have to find a way of dealing with them. Because that is the cost of development. It happens all over the world. And that is why you have a state power to compulsory acquire. So the government will have to compulsory acquire and pay them compensation. When we built the Berbice Bridge, we had to move dozens of family and compensate them. And they were Indians. When we built the Hope Canal, we had to move dozens of families, both Indo-Guyanese and Afro-Guyanese, and they were all compensated. The Demerara Harbour Bridge, the new Harbour Bridge, we have to move again. We have to take back the lands of dozens of people, Afro-Guyanese and Indo-Guyanese, and pay them compensation. The Schoonard Road that we are building right now involves the taking back of several plots of land from mostly Indo-Guyanese. We are building the pipeline now from Schoonard all the way to Wales. Dozens of plots of land have to be acquired by the state. Most of them Indo-Guyanese, some Afro-Guyanese. Norton chooses to identify Mocha to say that we are bulldozing Afro-Guyanese property. I am taking my time here so that the Guyanese people can understand the agenda of these guys and how they are distorting information to prosecute their case of racism. He then says that the PPP taking away Afro-Guyanese land from Kurukuru Co-op to give to PPP supporters. I spoke to the Minister of Cooperatives, Joseph Hamilton, and he says that what the co-op officer has done at Kurukuru Co-op is to dismantle the co-op because they're not accounting They're not doing anything for the residents, and they're just holding on to office. And their books are in total disorder. Their accounting records not in compliance with the law. The chief co-op officer exercising powers under the Cooperatives Act set up an interim management committee of the same village, the same community. And the government now is working with that community, and lands have been cleared for the first time for roads to go into this community. Roads are going there, but government is doing it. A police station will be built there shortly, and a health center. These are not facilities that this community ever had before. But all Norton can see is that PPP government taking away lands from black people to give to PPP supporters. And his mind, PPP supporters, you know what he means by PPP supporters? He means Indo-Guyanese. That is the racism, and that's what I'm saying, that this crop of PNC leaders and leaders in the opposition are incapable of leadership. They are not worthy to lead anybody in this country. And the Guyanese people, I am sure, are slowly coming to this realization. He speaks about some co-op in Essequibo. Minister Joe Hamilton issued 2 statements last week about this co-op in Essequibo, and yet he continues with this lie. And then look what he says about, then he goes to his favorite hunting ground, Linden. And he says the PPP and PPP taking away land from Linden. This guy, between 2006 to 2011, I've said it many times in this program, thousands of residents of Region 10 were given small forestry concessions for the first time under this government, under PPP government. They were given forestry concessions. APNU government bankrupted all of them between 2015 to 2020. Bankrupted all of them. The only area, the only region in the country that had 2 loan programs, Leaf and Lend, was Linden. Leaf and Lend, 2 loan programs for small businesses under the PPP government. And I can go on to speak about it, but let me stick to the land. I went in 2020, after the elections, sometime in October 2020, I was part of a cabinet outreach to Linden. I went into the mines, and the people of Linden, I'm sure they voted for APNU. They showed me some bushes, forests, and they pointed to me and they said, that is where APNU gave us house lots. Nothing is demarcated, but they don't know, but each one of them got a number. And they don't know where the number is, what the number relates to. Nothing is demarcated, nothing is lotted out. The thing is not even weeded. It's overgrown with bushes and trees. And they just give them one chit, and they said, right there your house lots are. That is what they are doing to their own supporters. From 2020 to 2022, from August 2020 to 2022, the PPP government has distributed 416 house lots in Linden alone. 416 house lots in Linden alone. Amelia Ward. In 2 years. This is more than APNU AFC did in 5 years. The statistics are there. We did more in 2 years for Linden in terms of house lot distribution that APNU AFC did in 5 years. And this Norton, I don't think he knows anything. This guy picks up information at the street corner. This is how an opposition leader will speak. This is the type of disinformation you would spread. The PPP will be building 500 houses. 500 houses in the next few years in Linden. That is our promise. That is our promise. 500 houses in Linden. And Norton seeks to speak about land and land distribution and accuse us, the PPP, of discrimination